This is Austin Liddy Limits, where authors talk to authors about books and the craft of storytelling. Sponsored by Blue Ink Review, because typing the end is just the beginning. Find out more at blueinkreview.com. Year of the Buffalo is a witty story of estranged brothers, one of whom has become rich from a video game featuring his one-time wrestling career as Mr. Bison. It takes them on a road trip and an attempt to establish the relationship they wish they had had when they were kids. Year of the Buffalo, a reading by Aaron Birch.
My name is Aaron Birch. Had a novel come out called The Year of the Buffalo. And so I'm going to read a version of the first chapter that has been edited down to try to make it kind of capsule size, but still give you the breadth of the opening of the novel. All right, so from Year of the Buffalo. Scott opened his bag, flipped through the handful of CDs he'd brought. He knew almost no one listened to CDs anymore, but he didn't care. He liked them. Staring at his laptop screen, Scott zoned out. Sugar on My Tongue became I Want to Live, became Love Building on Fire, became I Wish You Wouldn't Say That. The keyboard swirled and David Byrne half crooned, half chirped the title lyrics, and Timmy the Bully Wallace sprang into Scott's mind. Timmy, who'd come out to the ring to I Wish You Wouldn't Say That. An odd choice, maybe the oddest Scott remembered. He had a theory, a handful of theories, actually. One, Timmy had really wanted Psycho Killer, an odd enough choice, but better? But maybe another wrestler had already used that. Scott had never heard it used, but that didn't mean it wasn't possible. In Scott's headphones, I Wish You Wouldn't Say That became Psycho Killer. And yes, Scott confirmed, it was definitely a much better walkout song. Timmy wasn't a psycho killer, though. He was the bully. Although what exactly that nickname meant was never really clear. It sometimes seemed like Tim was a bully himself, but other times like he'd been the kid that had been bullied growing up and was now wrestling to seek revenge on his tormentors, to stand up for bullied kids everywhere. Maybe I Wish You Wouldn't Say That was fitting. Maybe it echoed the cry of bullied little kid Timmy, and the loudspeakers blared it before matches to remind him where he'd come from, to get him fired up for the match. None of their personas had actually been that thought through, though. Later, Holly would help him put together backstory, motivation, a whole character. He'd been confused when she asked who he was. I'm Mr. Bison, he said, not understanding. Right. But were you like a buffalo trainer, a buffalo hunter, a buffalo reincarnated, a living embodiment of the spirit of a buffalo? I just like buffalo, he told her. Another theory, the song was supposed to have been Psycho Killer, but the sound guy had queued up the wrong track. Another, maybe not even the wrong track, but an altogether wrong CD. Maybe it was supposed to have been something with screeching guitars, a yell, Quiet Riot or Whitesnake, maybe. Scott smiled at himself, at his theories, remembering the old days more fondly than he had in a long time. He typed Tim Wallace into his search bar, found an accountant, an author of self-published model train books, a high school athlete who looked to have just set his school record for both the 50 and 100-yard dashes. Scott highlighted Tim Wallace, retyped Timmy the Bully Wallace. A row of images popped up and he laughed out loud before catching himself and reeling the laugh back in. He looked so ridiculous, so 80s, even though these were all late 90s. Maybe the pictures actually looked so 90s, and Scott had just forgotten how long ago that had been. Their definitions of style, what had been awesome. David Byrne saying, "They say compassion is a virtue, but I don't have the time." Scott looked back at his screen, scanned his eyes down past the pics, and immediately stopped at the very first link. Dead Wrestler of the Week. He clicked it before asking himself if he wanted to or not. He read, Timothy the Bully Wallace, real name Mike Sanders, died July 3rd, 2008. No autopsy, assumed drug overdose. Scott skimmed the page, only half reading. It talked of Timmy's feuds, his tag team partners, his devoted fan base despite never crossing over into large popularity. No mention of the talking heads. Scott realized the CD had ended and wondered how long he'd been listening to nothing. He took off his headphones and wrapped them in their own cord. He put Sand in the Vaseline Disc 1 back into its 2-CD jewel case back in his bag. In his truck, sitting there in the parking lot, before he even got his keys in the ignition, Scott started crying. He wasn't sniffling. It wasn't coming down in waves, just a sheet of tears all down his face.
This has been a presentation of Austin Liddy Limits, made possible with help from our good friends at Blue Ink Review, where typing "the end" is just the beginning. Find out more at blueinkreview.com.